Hello. So I want to talk today about fear. I think it's an appropriate time to talk about fear, especially where I live. See, to talk about fear is complicated. You need to have something that a lot of people can agree whether they are afraid or are not afraid, and also be able to have a visceral reaction to it. If I want to talk to you about fear, I need to find something in you that resonates with the subject. And right now, the biggest thing in this country that will do that is this election. I have tried not to talk about politics. When I think about the future, if anybody ever starts asking me real questions, and if they were to ask me why I don't like to talk about politics, it's because most of my life I have believed that it doesn't matter who I vote for. The world I live in will not be radically changed by who I vote for or don't vote for. Because it's not them that are making these decisions. They don't have the kind of power we like to project into them when it comes time to vote. They just don't have that. But nonetheless, it's a good subject because right now it's causing an awful lot of fear. I know friends that are making incredibly rash decisions because of fear right now. I know people who are making arguments and the undertone behind it is fear. I know I have made arguments at work with coworkers, and I could recognize when the undertone of the argument I was making was based in fear. And that is coming from someone who really believes that whoever I vote for, it isn't what they want me to think it is. It's not the kind of power that it was supposed to be or that it could have been because of the amount of money needed. I am not voting for the person. It's like they're the selected face of the money that's backing them. And I could give a shit less about your money. I don't want to live in fear because somebody has money and a mouthpiece. That's how I view politics. And it seems to me that it's never been more obvious that that is the case than it is right now. But why don't I just move forward with the idea that it is reality, it is real, that we are really choosing between what is on offer, that it's not just a show. Imagine that reality is politics is just a show. But let's pretend it's not. I want to start with the left first. What you're offering us right now is an election of vibes, not substance. See, because I recognize, I'm willing to admit that this world needs to change. I'm willing to admit that the primary species on this planet, us, need to have the opportunity to change. I voted for Barack Obama in his first election when he said hope and change. I remember the thrill. I remember the tears. I remember the power. But it didn't go anywhere. The left has this problem. Even if right now, in the next couple of weeks, all across this country, we voted to give you absolute power. It's just you suddenly found yourself having all of the power you could ever need. No roadblocks. Remember Obama when he was his first 4 years? No matter what he did, there was an entire section of Congress that just of our government that just would not let anything happen. Even if that was reversed this time and Harris gets in and she's got no obstruction whatsoever, if we gave you all the power, opportunity, you'd fuck it up. No side in this conflict can trip over their own feet more often. We talk about Trump and his speech footballs, his speech fumbles, whatever you want to call it. The left can actually have the power and just fail to utilize it properly. It's incredible to watch you people work. So if you're afraid that the left is going to win this one and somehow the world is going to end, that fear is irrelevant. These people have not been able to put one foot in front of the other for a very long time. I remember Clinton, and then Clinton was supposed to be the guy that would unify us and that would move our country forward in a positive way. Passes the crime bill, which led to some of the worst levels of incarceration we've ever had in our country. The left cannot succeed because they don't have focus. And that's never been more true. The left has got wokeism now. See, I have an unfair advantage over some of you. I was faux woke long before y'all even knew it was a thing. I thought I was, without having a term, woke. All of my life, I thought other humans were just bafflingly amazing at what they do, what they say, and what they think, because I thought I was woke all of that time. And that's now, it seems, where a majority of people are falling. Faux woke is like, I don't really talk about the left much on these things because I have a specific problem I'm trying to overcome with these talks. And you guys have the same problem. Faux woke is like the religious version of spirit based in ego. That's your Achilles heel. Faux woke, this wokeism that's everywhere right now, is all ego. It's seen internally to them as spiritual growth, but it's just ego stroking. Modifying the amount of ways you can stroke your ego. Spirit based in ego is faux or fake woke. And that is everywhere right now. How can you have a focus that achieves real in time or real benefits for humans as we're making the changes? You can't get that without a focus. If the left has no focus, they're really not a threat. I haven't really come up with a good term for the religion that is atheism. But when you look at it attached to faux woke, that spirit based in ego that is driving the growth of that kind of perspective. And faux woke isn't just about the humanists. It's also about those on the spiritualist side that only feel this vagueness of energy. They feel like it's something they could latch onto and learn more about and grow via doing it. But it's not anything beyond their ego. It is perception. It is not, they will never actually see it in front of their faces. They'll never see it and be able to utilize it. When I talk to the mind before matter, my people, the people who believe in higher intelligence, that believe those higher intelligence or that higher intelligence has a stake in our development. When I talk to them about how it's ego-based in spirit, that they've been deriving from the Bible as they've read it, that is manifest in you on the left when you're only opening your mind to satisfy your ego, to reconfirm in you that you really are trying to be the best version of yourself without actually changing anything. Like it's harder for me to talk to the left because the kind of awakening the majority of people are trying to experience right now feels genuine. I remember it felt genuine. For decades, it felt genuine. It didn't change anything, but it felt like it was all change. When I talk to what I would consider my side, the mind before matter people, and I try to explain to them that what the problem is spirit based in ego and not actual growth. That's what I mean for the left too, because this wokeism bullshit, it's not doing what you think it's doing. Your growth isn't what you think it is. But at the same time, I went through it for a long time, and eventually it was something tangible. So I guess the best definition of faux woke then, from my perspective, is fake it till you make it. Good job. You don't even need substance abuse problems for the tenets of Alcoholics Anonymous to help you out. Oh, I really don't want to touch this next subject. See, when I'm trying to prepare this thing, this talk I'm giving now, I tell myself to be patriotic. I tell myself to try and show, to find a way to show that it doesn't matter how bad this subject is. It doesn't matter how bad the talk is. All I need to do is find one mind, flip a switch in that mind, and that mind can go off and do whatever the fuck it's going to do. It doesn't have to involve me. I don't need the fame. I need to find those switches and flip them. That's my job. See, like, I was just watching Bill Maher, and there's this guy I've never even heard of, but apparently he's rich on there, and he's holding true to some of the things I agree with, so that I can see that there are people out there are minds out there that have switches I can flip that can start this ball rolling. If you are on the left in this election, somehow you're watching my face. First of all, you should be careful about YouTube spirals. If you found me after a bunch of rants and you're kind of angry right now, you might be stuck in an algorithmic spiral. But if you are on the left, understand that there is a lot of glory and power to be snatched up. It's just lying around for free right now in this world. Nobody seems to be tapping into it. If I can somehow get you to recognize it while I'm talking about the other side, if you see it, run with it. But there was a subject that came up about Bitcoin, about how much energy and how much environmental impact Bitcoin has on our environment. And I'm thinking to myself, I want to build a world. I want to set in people's minds this notion of building this new world. And one of the cornerstones of that new world is the everyday person, common people like me, are generating the energy, generating the food, generating the housing, so that those problems are wiped from this freaking battleground that we have in this election. You see, everybody talks about how on the right, I don't want to talk about the right yet. Sorry. Look, if Bitcoin really does consume that much energy, and there's plenty of data out there, you can make your own decision. Facts are actually facts. You can't change them by opinion. Then, and if for some reason Bitcoin isn't a scam, because I'm still in a position where I think that shit's fake, all these other coin companies and currency traders and everything about digital currency has not been great so far. But I don't know, maybe yours is different. If your problem is energy generation, and I don't know, do you also have a problem with acceptance by people like me? Because clearly I don't think it's a real thing. Why can't the mind I find to flip that switch in make the connection that says if common people, if we reverse the grid situation where everybody is creating the energy and pumping it into the grid, as opposed to some coal-fired plant over here making the energy and pumping it into the grid, if you can flip that on its head, is Bitcoin suddenly more viable? If for some reason these things ever start to make money, the first thing I would do is buy land and see how much energy, what is the gross product land can actually produce. How many people can it house? How much food could it produce? How much energy could it produce? How could we landscape how could we, see, when I call people about it, I tell them it's terraforming. How can we terraform our planet to maximize its productivity? And there's a lot of data. I talk about how we live in the best time in our history, where if I have an idea like this, there is enough data to work with, build on, and if I create more data, there are places for that data to go and be useful. People talk about wealth inequality. This is a way to flip that on its head. And it is a way to use what has been failed in the past to fuel, purchase, and expand on what we need in the future. I just need to find those right minds and flip those switches. But there's a lot of hope. There's a lot of power. There's a lot of legacy out there just waiting to be had. And somehow, you guys just don't see it. What I need is a new Elon Musk. Somebody different than Elon Musk, but just like him, who is looking for a way to freaking grow a new world. It's out there to be had. And they were talking about in this episode about how our economy is going freaking amazing right now. And they're talking about how it is that we came back from the worst with the absolute 3 times that of the best countries in the world. How do we do that? And they're talking about the unique mindset of American ingenuity. So the minds are there. I just need them to flip those little switches and we get this fucking ball rolling. And there are so many battles. See, one of the things that fuels progress amongst the working class, people like me, is a good idea with a good argument and a good enemy. We lost some pretty crucial battles in my lifetime. I remember farmers losing their battle, and what we got out of that was a shit ton of corn that isn't even edible by us. But I get it. Supply and demand created that environment. We lost Main Street to Walmart on so many battlefronts that it is now just ubiquitous. It's just accepted fact. Until Amazon kicks the crap out of Walmart, this is the state of the world. There are so many battle cries that could be sounded. There's a lot of glory to be had out there. A lot of simple freaking things that you could do in order to actually change this. If you are a person with power and that flip that switch that has been flipped. You don't need me. If it's my ideas that fueled it, fine, but you don't need me for it. And one of the things that gives me the most comfort in my meditations is when I have ideas, when I have exploration sessions that end in great results. It is always going to be true that I and you watching this, we are not unique. Because we see a thing doesn't mean that we're the only ones that see it. If I am a person that can see all of this glory out there, all of this potential, all of this power, this legacy waiting to happen for the future, and I am not unique, there are switches that could be flipped to set this ball in motion. When I think about, does my vote really matter? I think, why has it felt like the economy is terrible through one of our best recoveries ever? The only thing that I can think to answer that is that our country isn't really run by its leaders. Our country is run by banks. And if the people with the money, these corporate interests and banks, if they want a certain kind of progress, then they can just make it worse for you until you make it what they want it to be. Maybe that's paranoid. Maybe that's conspiratorial thinking. But how far off from the truth is it? Look, maybe it's even true that the left could win this election just based on how sick many of us are of weed being illegal. If Wisconsin goes all in to the left in this election, it is going to be because the deciding factor is probably because we want legal weed here. Maybe it's not quite all the power you think they have. I mean, and maybe I'm wrong about that, right? The left wouldn't completely win because we want legal weed, right? That couldn't happen to you. What would we be left with? Well, we'd have legal weed, so who cares, right? Oh, man. That's all I really have to say about the left. And I really only said some of it because I don't want to talk about the right just now. But here we are talking about fear in October 2024, using the subject of the election as something that can be identified with by more people. So how can I not talk about President Donald Trump? If somehow you watch this, you are probably also in a YouTube spiral, and there are books that can help with that. But if for some reason you're looking at my face while I say this, I have been alive for almost 50 years, and you have been here this whole time. You have been a thing. And my mom used to like Entertainment Tonight. Dude, you were on that show a lot. My whole life, you've been a part of it. I remember when you opened a university targeting poor people. Yeah, I know it was just the Donald way of doing things. Go ahead, use my name. Let's get that brand out there. But I also remember you talking against student loan relief when you had a university that targeted poor people to take advantage of them. See, now, I haven't liked you most of my life, but most of my life it was just something you could just laugh off. I didn't like how you came into this race. It started with your birth certificate bullshit with Barack Obama. which was yet another one of the reasons why so many people didn't like him as a president, was because of your bullshit and them buying it. I didn't like how you ran in the primaries, the Republican primaries, the way you basically bullied your way through every bit of competition. I don't understand how the side that is on the side of morals, God, and justice sees a bully like you and actually liked what you did. I didn't like your bullshit promises once you got the nomination about fucking building a wall and having Mexico pay for it. Could have been one of the most evil things I've ever heard a president candidate say, but people loved it. I didn't like how you acted when you won the freaking thing. You're in that speech you guys give after you win the election. The entire audience was just dumbfounded. And you used it as a bully pulpit to freaking look. See, I told you, motherfucker. I told you I would win. I told you, hey, whoever's back in the green room, get out here and show the world your face. I liked nothing about what you were doing when you were president. I think Dave Chappelle said it best when he characterized you as in front of a reporter saying, "Quit finding shit out." I didn't like the whole drinking bleach during the COVID pandemic. I was on the side that said, you people are going crazy with the masks bullshit and all this other stuff. 2 weeks off for a head cold in Wisconsin? Seriously? I didn't like any of this shit. But you were a president, and nobody can take that away from you. You were never a great businessman. You played one on TV, but you were never. I remember a time when you were going through your worst, where all these bankruptcies in Atlantic City had failed, and you had spent all of your time sort of isolated. I like to think that somewhere in you is a memory of what it's like to be isolated and calm. I like to think that somewhere in you that exists. And if you're watching this, I'd like you to remember that version of you. Look, you were one thing my entire life, and you took it and you did the legendary thing and got elected motherfucking president of the United States. On that day, giving that speech, that thing after the election, after you win and all that, I get where the ego was coming from. But it didn't open your eyes at all. Because that same guy that's been around my whole life before you got elected was there showing you what that guy would be like if he got a really powerful, important job. And it was sad. But still legendary. The only way you can lose that legendary status is if you give it away. You were legend winning that office. No matter how you executed the office, you hit legendary status. Nobody could take that away from you except you, and you lost it. When the big lie, that cost you legendary status. You had a chance, you were there, you had made it to glory, and you trashed it. Now, I'm making this before the election. So within a couple weeks, somebody could easily watch this video and you will have won the election. I don't know how it's going. I know how I'm voting. If you've re-won this election, you have reclaimed legendary status. How you did it, I'm quite pissed off with you for. I understand how consciousness works. I can see how you've won it. If you are now, again, a legend, don't fuck it up again. And that does not mean become a dictator. Maybe that's what you think it means. I don't know you. But that's not what I mean by it. You have done a thing to first become legendary. You kept doing that thing until it cost you legendary status. You continued doing that thing until maybe now you are a legend again. There are a lot of ways that you could cement that. Becoming a bigger dick is not the way to go. I'd say there's a lesson to be learned there. Now, let's get off of my ego trip and stop assuming that Donald Trump is ever going to watch my face say this shit. If you are a supporter of Donald Trump, if you're a supporter and you are a business, you are fuck regulation, you don't want nothing to do with regulation, you don't think our government should be making regulation, you should understand that your side, the side that has been that way all throughout, is now the side of big government because your dude is Trump. And I am fucking sick of it. You guys are now big government proponents. You want him to have tribunals and all this bullshit that he talks about? Part of what's going wrong in our world. See, you all think he's come to Christ. This is my problem with our side of this argument. That you think this bully and actor is working for God. And this is where spirit based in ego has been the bane of everyone who has ever believed in God. You think it's the weak link to faux woke? It is the weak link and has been the weak link to the church for much, much longer than my lifetime. I want you to understand what the church is. For all of history, the church, since, well, not all of history, but let's say 2,000 years ago. Let's go back 2,000 years and start history there. For this part of history, the church was a limiting factor and an organizing factor. It was something that allowed us to deeply instill the idea of the golden rule into as many effing humans as we possibly could. I don't know what it is about us that was reversed by this long, protracted period of guilt and willingly subjugating ourselves to belief in a higher power. That giving up of our ego to believe in something else. I don't know what that long, protracted period was correcting for in us, because whatever it was, I think has gone. That was started. I'm going to give the credit to Jesus Christ because that seems to be the era of the church. Right there is where it started. If you believe that Jesus was a man walking around with the knowledge of God because that man was also God, I want you to understand what that man understood. That man, Jesus Christ, already understood particle physics, already understood that we were on a globe, already understood how that globe orbited, where it orbited. It understood more about the surrounding solar systems than we currently do, understood gravity, understood genetics, understood memetics, understood germs, understood evolution, understood what he was doing, who he was ministering to, understood what his goal was, what he was introducing to human consciousness, to human mind. There was a plan, is a plan. There were actions taken. there were reasons for those actions, and those outcomes are playing out in slow, real time. Fast forward to the Enlightenment, to the scientific revolution. Science started out as trying to understand God. Before we understood particle physics and genetics, we were trying to understand that much about God. When we discover genetics, we understand more about what the man Jesus Christ actually knew and understood. I have said that I agree with the secret history of the world in that what God's perfect purpose was in becoming Jesus Christ was to introduce empathy. Everything that came up to that point in our history was leading us to just preparing us to be ready for empathy. All of this enormous, see, according to the Bible, there was a section of humanity set aside as an example. In that example, there was a lot of blood sacrifice. What was that blood sacrifice? See, the God of physics, genetics, memetics, all that doesn't need us to kill cows and lambs and for only special cows and lambs. That blood doesn't have anything special for them. The only reason we would be required to do that is if it needed to prepare us for something that was coming later. That something was a God in man form who understood genetics, memetics, electricity, electrons, gravity, all of this shit, trying to prepare us with empathy. That work took 2,000 years to get us to where we are now. Within the last couple hundred years, science has finally started to make progress on understanding what it is God is like. We couldn't have understood that God understood about multiple realities, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on and on. If David Deutsch tells you we have data that suggests multiple realities are true, that shows us more about God. It's not evidence of his non-existence, because that is the same argument. Do you think that God, understanding what we now know he must have understood then, came down, lived like this, died horrifically so that we could have Christianity? Do you think that that was the goal, the plan? That is all us, all of Christianity, all its dogma, all its history, all its actions, all its faith, all its power is us. Jesus didn't give his life for us to have Christianity. He gave his life to give us empathy. And he gave it to us at a very specific time after a certain amount of preparation. And that lesson took 1,500 plus years to finally lead us to our ability to discover more about that God. God, or Jesus alone, Jesus himself would not say we should build a wall and have Mexico pay for it. That is not Christian. Jesus would not have taken examples of immigrants, belittled them, made them monsters, put them down, and made his supporters fearful of them for gain. That's not how this shit works. We have spent 2,000 years trying to get this lesson. We are now in a position where we have plenty of data readily available for us to understand that that is true. He's not chosen by God. That is what drives me crazy about the right. Look, try an experiment with me. Just try an experiment. If you are on Trump's side, and if you have legitimate business reasons, dude, I get it. I absolutely get it. That is not a stupid reason to vote for Trump. If you are pro-business in a way that the Republican side of policy is the way you should vote, well, then I totally get it. But if you are voting for him because you think he's God's candidate, I want you to do this experiment. I've been alive for almost 50 years now. I have known a lot of people in that time. I know when I hear somebody talking loud about themselves, listening to no opposition, just writing it all off, that these freaking blowhards are what most of society today is calling narcissists. Do you know people like that? Do you know people who talk loud because they're afraid? Do you know people who brag because they're insecure? Do you know people who will say you did something to them because it is something they would be willing to do to you? Not because it's true, but because they would be willing to, you must have done it to them. When you listen to this man, forget all of your voices, like Carlson Tucker or whoever the fuck your voices are. I try to stay away from news in that regard. Take all of those other voices out of it and listen to the man, because the man sounds exactly like all of those people I've just described, and I would never vote for any one of them for any kind of power, whether it be on the farm or in the country. Just forget for a minute what everybody else is telling you to think about this guy and look at the reality of him. He is not chosen by God. He is chosen by a church that has fallen into a trap. That trap is ego-based spirituality. That trap should have been solved with the scientific revolution and in our further understanding of what God is actually like, but instead made the scientific revolution allow itself to become the enemy in people like Charles Darwin, who was actually a man of faith and created an enemy of God because he missed the most simple point. The things we discover about the creation don't argue against the majesty of God. They enlighten our understanding of that majesty. And even if you have won this election, Donald Trump, I guess I'm back to pretending you're watching this. Even if you have won, if you are now looking for a way to cement your legacy, I have an idea. I have an idea that could actually unite humans, make their lives better, and spread those discoveries and knowledge and power to the rest of the planet. There is legacy, there is power, there is history to be made right here. And if you want to be the actor that frontlines it, I'll fucking work with you too. Or you could just take what I've said, allow it to create your ideas, and never mention my name. That would be great too. So, remember I'm talking about fear. If you are somebody who is actually interested in personal growth, that is actually interested in doing the work that keeps spiritual growth from feeding your ego, God, that is a lot of work. Ego is everywhere, man. It's like fear. When you first start doing work on fear, trying to recognize where it's influencing you, why it makes you make decisions, where that fear originated from, when you're first trying to discover all the places in which fear has infested and infected your life, your consciousness, your mind, it feels like scapegoatism, really, You find it everywhere. So ubiquitous, so scattered throughout your personality that it almost feels like you're running away from something just by having to identify it again and again and again. You're like, oh, there too? Look at you there too. Am I not just hiding from something and blaming it on fear? It's actually everywhere. And I'm somebody who likes to watch our stories. I will tell you, this is the greatest time in human history for human storytelling. And it's only getting better, and it'll only continue to get better. If my production company idea ever takes off in somebody's mind, I've got some ideas for you, because storytelling without marketing attached could become something completely beautiful. And I think people already know that. I'm not unique. It's already out there. The switches that need to be flipped in that regard are so fucking simple. You could make $1 billion company just on simple ideas in that regard. Copyright law probably affects it in some ways that I'm not aware of, because that kind of minutia isn't interesting to me. But when we tell stories now, I remember The Expanse. There was this admiral in The Expanse. Everything this admiral did, and he was a very powerful individual, was driven by fear. Every choice he made, the war he started, how he enacted his actions in that war, everything he did was based in fear. This isn't just something like we common people have problems with. This is everywhere in humanity. Trying to understand and get away from ego-based spirituality requires that you identify the areas in which fear has infected you. And that is all of us, from presidents to lowly painters like myself. How do you actually do this work? See, when people talk about the algorithm ruining our minds, it's because the algorithm feeds on a thing that makes it hard to focus for the individual. You are distracted constantly, which means you lose your capability to focus for beneficial mind wandering. If you want to work on fear, if you want to work on getting away from spirit-based and ego, in other words, actual growth, not cementing what you already believe is good about yourself, but growing out of that, you need to work on focus. You need to work on beneficial mind wandering. And if you are too distracted because of all the other voices telling you how it is you should think, then you need to start eliminating those voices and spend some time. I get it. I'm a guy who loves his solitude. I'm the guy who really loves his quiet. But you need a bit more of that. When I was younger, I couldn't stand the people that said, yeah, they're just less human because they don't meditate much or at all. And I can imagine when I had my own business, I was constantly going. And the thing that, besides the 2008 recession, the things that really stopped that was distraction. Would I have been successful had I not been so distracted? And I found a way to distract myself. And before 2008, before we had phones like this and apps through these phones like that, distraction and lack of growth are not new things. They're just a lot harder to get around now. I've recommended books like Johann Hari's Stolen Focus. If you want to work on these things and actually move away from ego-based spirituality, because there's some really remarkable things to discover. I don't know if it's required to do this work in order to see the amount of glory that's out there to be picked up, out there just for the taking. I think I'd rather have the person that actually does the taking do this kind of work. to be as successful as an Elon Musk. Elon Musk is having his own successes, and he certainly has his own problems. But to be somebody that can actually do this work at that level, I think requires that you spend time in meditation, reflection, focus. And certainly to find the diversity of answers I've found, you definitely need quality mind wandering and flow. You need to have quality mind wandering, which generally happens in silence or very familiar circumstances or a familiar environment. For me, it's the stories and a little bit of weed. To have that mind wandering lead to flow, lead to focus, lead to discovery. That's how you fight fear. You need something to counter it. And you can't find those things to counter it while you're moving at this pace with a bunch of bullshit. While it is profitable to spread bullshit, bullshit will be spread. So the person I am looking to flip those switches in doesn't need to be part of the bullshit. They can do the work and the results are enough reward. But I know ways that you could make it profitable where you could look. That's one of the beautiful things about the country I live in, the United States. If you have an idea and if you run with it, making money is a natural result of actually doing things people enjoy. That's also how capitalism works. It doesn't have to be enormous corporations making the tax code more complicated. It can also be success on a broader scale. Remember, we used to have this thing called the middle class? Why not rebuild that and be the billionaire that rebuilt it? You don't have to be Bezos or Musk or Gates. Look, I'm approaching an hour. And I get that the hope I'm giving you is hard to see because it's in my mind and I'm trying to share it, but part of the benefits of that is that I need the hope to be born in your mind too. Because one mind cannot see all ends, no matter whose it is. The profit and glory I would like to see mined from this planet and our species going forward is something that encourages the growth of unique consciousness, unique mind. And one of the things we also understand now, because of our ability to collect and store and organize data, is that unique mind is actually a falsehood. My mind sees and says and feels driven to try and explain these things, but my mind is not unique. If my mind were unique, it would be ludicrous for me to envision a switch inside your mind that I could flip to try and help. Just that analogy alone shows if my mind was unique, I am using it to make it less unique. We don't have to be fucking special. We don't have to need rewards in order to be satisfied in this life, in order to have purpose in this life. I suppose it could be inevitable that in order to succeed in a materialistic, in a more solidifying materialistic environment or existence, that egotism must be the spirituality of currency. But I think I'd like to fight against that because I think the results we've gotten from that have been pretty blah. There's much better we could be doing. So here we are. That is Fear, October 2024. Another one almost an hour long. Sorry about that. Thank you for listening.